This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening and welcome to the Alpena City Council meeting of October 4th, 2021. Call the order, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Here.
Councilman Mitchell.
Here.
Councilman Nowak is excused. Councilman Osmer.
Here.
And Mayor Walagora.
Here. Please rise to the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. Councilman Mitchell.
Yes.
Councilman Osmer.
Yes.
And Mayor Walagora.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Any other modifications? Approval of the minutes for the regular session of September 20th, 2021. Any issues, changes? Okay, citizens appearing before council on agenda and non-agenda items are allowed 5 minutes each to address your concerns. This is the only time during tonight's meeting you're allowed to address council. If you'd like to do so and you're live, please come to the podium and state your name and address.
Can't hear you.
If you'd like to address council, please come to the podium and state your name and address, and then go ahead.
My name is Larry Kunze. I live at 1018 Sabo. And I'd like to know how the city justifies $225 permit to put a new hot water heater in. I usually did things on my own under the homeowners. My son-in-law, who helped me, was laid up for the knee operation, and its heater was leaking. So I had to call a contractor. Lo and behold, I see a bill for $225 for a water heater. How do you justify that?
Well, you kind of caught me off guard. It would generally be a question for our building department. Have you contacted them and asked them specifically where the charges come from?
You set the rate, not the contract. Well, how do you justify it? $225?
Plumbing inspection.
And you can't give me an answer on that?
Assuming it's-
Those are the fees that are approved in the regular fee schedule, I believe. But this is the first I've.
You know,
Do you think that those tactics are crossing the line?
I don't think they're appropriate tactics, but
I worked for the city for just about 30 years. I know how things work behind the scenes. Somebody set this fee.
We set the fee with the fee schedule goes along with our budget in the spring.
Well, how do you justify $225?
So that's all worked out prior to that. So you kind of jumped into, I don't even normally get into a discussion during open comment, but if you contact our building department, and Tony is here and Don is on the call, they can easily explain that to you, where those costs come from.
There was no inspection or anything. Nobody showed up. You're just passing a buck onto somebody else. When it's your decision, the council sets the fees, not him.
So what I'm gonna do for you, not for you, but for myself, is look into it. And
That's about what I expected to hear.
I didn't think I'd be able to give you a good answer, but I'm gonna give you one as soon as I can get that answer for you. Apparently you don't want to talk to our building department. Sorry to be a little bit curt there, but would anybody else like to address council?
Hello, it's Mark Hunter, 6148. In the minutes for the previous meeting where a new council person was selected, the votes weren't reported. All it said was each of you put your 1, 2, 3, first, second, third choice. that's unfair to the voters to not know how each council member voted. It's not a good example of transparency. It's a poor example.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else slide? Anyone in the virtual meeting?
Mayor, I have one thing I was going to announce.
Sure.
Rachel Smolinski, the city manager. I just wanted to announce the trick or treating date and hours. It's going to be on Sunday, October 31st from 5:30 to 7:30. And we'll have it as under announcements at our next meeting as well, but I wanted to let the public know. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on with the rest of the meeting. The consent agenda this evening is A, bills to be allowed in the amount of $505,033.60. B is approval of a noise ordinance variance request for Joe's Bar located at 1500 Ford Avenue on October 16th and the 30th, 2021, from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. And C is approval of multiple budget amendment requests as a result of the chart of accounts conversion, which can be all of those amendments can be found in a packet.
I can include the consent agenda list.
Councilman Mitchell,
Yes.
Councilman Osmer, Mayor Walagora,
Aye.
and Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. Motion carried.
Next up, we have a presentation, Governments for Tomorrow, and Liam Dreyer is here. He's the founder and CEO. Liam, the stage is yours.
Hello, thank you everyone for inviting me here today to speak with everyone. I am here today representing the nonprofit organization I founded a little under a year ago called Government for Tomorrow. And our mission is to create non-voting student positions on local government boards. What exactly a non-voting student position is it's an opportunity for a local high school to join, per se, your DDA board, your Parks and Recreation board, your planning commission, and we've even worked with libraries in the past, and not just bring their opinion to the table, but to bring the student consensus. And they achieve this by email polling. So for example, they will break down an agenda item that their board wants them to into student lingo and then send it to every single person in their school. And every single person in that school will get the email and have the option of clicking, yes, I support this agenda item, no, I do not. And then underneath it, they can write their reasons as to why. So with one position, it's not just a student, it's a representation of a previously unrepresented demographic. Now, how exactly we do this is through a three-step process. We've replicated this in over 10 cities, ranging from Sault Ste. Marie, and our lowest one is Saginaw. Our first step is to actually work with local government representatives, like you all here today, and convince you of the merits of actually creating these student positions. We try and convince the community that it was a good idea to incorporate the youth in decision-making, in, of course, a non-voting capacity. Then we go on to our second step of the process, which arguably could be the longest, and that's where we're approaching schools and presenting in classrooms the same merits that we would present to a city council or a DDA, but we're transforming it to light the spark in the student's mind as to why it's a good idea not to just follow the politics you would see on a national television, but for them to also realize that your day-to-day decisions are mostly decided by the people sitting on your city council or the people sitting on your DDA. And once they begin to conceptualize that, for example, in Traverse City, I think we had 50 applications for one position. You know how crazy that is? That's one position that 50 students now want to fill, all for the sake of wanting to represent their peers in local government, bringing the youth voice to the table. Our third step of the process, well, to complete the second step, we actually have a selections committee, which is comprised of 2 volunteers from Government for Tomorrow, and then we also usually work with a local government representative from whatever board passes a student position. So there are 3 people on this committee, and we're judging the students who submit an application for the position, not on their GPA or extracurriculars, but on how motivated they are to be involved. We then interview and then select or make a recommendation as to whom we think should fill the local government position, and then the local government representative who is on the selections committee also makes a recommendation. And because we went through the same exact process at the same exact time, we've never had it where 2 recommendations competed with one another. They're always for the same student. So now you have 2 recommendations, and usually the student will come in front of city council, and city council will appoint the student to their board. And the third step of the process is the most important. And that's not just us leaving the student on this board and moving on to the next city. We have a process which makes sure that this student is the most effective proponent of the board possible, that they know how to accurately represent and objectively represent their peers' point of view, that they can learn things like Robert's Rules of Order. We walk them through basic parliamentary procedures so they know exactly when to talk. So when they do it, they're a lot more confident. That's what we're trying to work at. Oftentimes it can take months for a student to become assimilated with this new setting, and we're trying to jumpstart that. Because that's really what we are doing, is we're bringing this new perspective, and oftentimes this perspective has never even been heard, certainly not listened to. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring it to this completely new setting, and it can be quite daunting. So we're giving them books on how to effectively communicate, how to public speak. And all of this is funded, not by the city. It doesn't cost you a dime. It is entirely funded through private foundations. Usually we work with the community foundation. I actually met with the county community foundation today, and we're talking about how possibly if city council or GDA or someone decided to pass a student position, how we would exactly fund that. But it wouldn't come out of a single dime of the taxpayer. It would all be funded privately. Why is it important to have a student position? Well, it can be broken down into 3 central reasons. The first reason is that more opinions will mean better decisions. And you have to ask yourself, is there any con to adding this new position? It is non-voting, remember. So in the case that our selections committee had failed, we have never received a complaint from a city. From all the cities that we've worked with, from all the boards we've worked with, we've never received a complaint from a city that a student wasn't doing their job. But in the case that we were, we have contingency plans, and the student is non-voting. They could not possibly impact a vote in a negative light other than espousing an opinion that may perhaps be uninformed. But oftentimes, they're bringing a perspective very different from people who usually serve on these local government boards who are 20, 30, 40 years older than them. Now, these aren't necessarily better ideas or worse ideas. They're just different ideas because they grew up in a new era. They grew up in a new generation. They're the closest idea of what we have that tomorrow will look like. And that leads into the second reason, because we like to say that it's a reciprocal relationship between the city and students. So the city is gaining this new opinion where they can be reassured that their decisions are appealing to the youth of their city. And then on the other hand, the student is gaining perhaps the best government class known to mankind. Seriously, I don't know if there is a single better way to learn the bedrock democracy that our country was founded upon than to join a local government board. And many of our students, we ask them, are you planning to go into politics? Most of them say no, we're not. And I guess you could make some comments on that. But you can apply these skills, the communication skills, the leadership skills that you would find while having to communicate with people who would usually these students would only consider mentors, but they also have to treat these adults as peers. That means they have to mature, and they're going to get that head start on life and things that usually only adults fill. The skills that they're learning today will help them for the rest of their career, no matter what field they go into. And the third reason comes from our name, Government for Tomorrow, for tomorrow. We believe that this organization is investing in the future of communities. Like I said, these students are the best idea of what tomorrow will look like. And 10 years down the line, when these students have graduated high school and they've graduated college, perhaps they found a husband or wife and they want to have kids somewhere, they're going to go back to the place that didn't just have these students as bystanders, but actually incorporated them into the process of whatever community they lived in. And they're not going to forget the values of joining a local government board when they come back. They're going to remember how impactful serving on a DDA was, or they may even go into the private, but let's say they join a service club. They're not going to forget these very impactful ideas, and they're going to bring them. So you'll have people who are 20, 30-year-olds, you'll have an abundance of younger people joining local government boards because in high school, they were inculcated with the merits of joining a local government board itself. Now, I pretty much went over that entire packet pretty quickly, and I'm sure there's a lot more information in the packet. There's a lot more information online, and I would love to hear your guys' opinions on the organization. I've spent most of the day speaking at the Alpena Community College to college students who are interested in local government. We do primarily work with high school students, but the amount of dual enrollment high schoolers at the college is astounding. It's really incredible how many high schoolers are in college level poli-sci classes. We've been able to speak to a lot of people. I actually have a meeting with the superintendent of the Alpena Public Schools tomorrow. I'm meeting with as many community leaders as possible to figure out the best way the organization can be implemented into the city. And now I'm in front of you guys to see what your opinion is.
Well, Ian, you're very well spoken, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not just saying that because you're the first person tonight to have a bus shop.
Thank you. Well,
Very well. I've got a couple of really just
of course, yeah.
questions. How many years does Government for Tomorrow operate?
Not even a year.
Okay.
Not even a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm really supportive of this, been really
Yeah.
kind of off and on discussing youth involvement many years and just really haven't really gotten it off the ground, mainly because I haven't found anybody to do what you suggested that you will do. So what would you expect a term length to be for a student or a young individual to be on that board? Is it going to turn over yearly, or is that going to depend on where they're at in high school when they're selected?
That's a good question because it's really down to the individual. And we get this question a lot from cities. And I think the best answer is I would wait to see what the selections committee comes up with, because we typically try and target sophomores and juniors. And the reason why we do this is because seniors are heading out the door and freshmen are just becoming acclimated with their new setting. So when we target sophomores, we would maybe consider a 2-year term. But if you're talking about a junior, maybe a 1-year term is more acceptable. Or if the student is especially adept in local government, we've had a few of those, we might consider a 2-year term. It really is dependent on the students themselves, and we will usually make a recommendation along with the student how long their term should be. Of course, you don't have to listen to us, but we usually base it on the individual. But it's 1 to 2 years. Yeah.
It's a fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I had, and I read over it, and so you're kind of, you're familiar with our form of government here, which are very similar to most cities. So you're suggesting planning commission, PDA, city council, or just not, or just
City council could be possible.
maybe on the committee levels.
What we would do is head into schools, see how many applications we get, how many students meet our minimum requirements, and then let's say we have 5 students who meet the minimum requirements. And let's say only 1 board has passed a position by then. Well, then you have 4 extra students, and we could inform other boards in the area or in just Alpena's local government and say, hey, we have students who want to be involved. And I guess you can kind of create a position along with the student.
I have one here.
Yeah.
The prospects that would be looking for these positions, will they be required to have attended in the past a board commission and council to understand what is going on? And they have to learn about how to do it, but would they have been attending these things first to see if it's something they wanted to do, but maybe they didn't want to after they got it?
We have to be careful making requirements on the student but we do recommend before they submit an application to attend whatever board meeting that they're applying to, just to see if they like it. So essentially, yes, we don't mandate it, but if they can put on their application, I attended the Downtown Development Authority their most recent meeting, and I loved what they were talking about, all these ideas as to how it could be better, or I can just comment on them in general, then that'll be a very strong application. So although we don't mandate it, it's probably a good idea for the student, and we recommend it.
I like the idea of getting the ground floor of community involvement. A lot in high school, which wasn't exactly a popular thing to do back in the 70s. We didn't know what we were doing then.
Yeah.
But it was just something that I always felt was very important myself. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
It's even
Well, actually, what Mayor Councilman Johnson said, you're very welcome. Actually, saw you on the Hill School, I think back in June, when I signed the board, down on that.
Oh, yes, yeah.
It was a really good presentation, actually, at that time. Started looking into, I did have one question, but it's one of those things I never thought I'd be able to actually ask face to face.
Here we go. Yeah.
The one question I do have, because of the way that you have the interview process set up, you have two from the government board tomorrow, and then you have one from the local board that you're serving on. Have you ever ran into the issue where the two overruled?
There are actually two separate recommendations.
They are, okay.
And we've never had them conflict in the past. I guess in the case that they would, it would be up to the city council, or it's different with each city, who exactly appoints the student.
And so when you put forth the one nominee, you put more than one nominee for consideration in case maybe you don't have to start the process all over. So let's say council's looking at the applicant, and for whatever reason, they decide not to go with that applicant. Is there a package where maybe you can say this person from the second, third?
We have exactly that. We have a ranking system. Essentially, we have a first place, a second place, a third place, and a fourth place, and a fifth place. And I believe our rubric is at 25 points. So it's just who scores the highest, who scores the second highest, who scores the third highest. And usually the student just goes to whichever board created the position first.
So what's the process for approval for us to say, how does this get going? You have to have.
This is more of a question I'd ask you. Yeah.
So tomorrow is the DDA board meeting, and so we'll go there, and Liam will do the same presentation. And I would expect that there would be a recommendation from the DDA board to, move forward with this program. And I would think once you went through the selection process and such, then we would bring that back as an appointment, as we normally would for any council appointments to the DDA board. So we would start there essentially with DDA, and then if there are other interested applicants, we could also look at planning commission and, even council if that's appropriate. And, what you would like to move forward with.
I mean, that sounds good to me. And I forgot to give a timeline. So it's difficult to estimate how quickly the schools will work with us, but because I have a meeting with the superintendent tomorrow, I imagine it will move pretty quickly, but I would still give, from the moment the position is created or the recommendation is made to go through with the process, 3 to 4 months.
Yeah, I honestly don't have any objection to it at all. And of course, we'll put some consideration on into council as to whether we could make that happen or not. But certainly the other boards should, as long as the boards themselves have approved it.
Okay.
How far did you come? Where are you housed up?
I'm in Charlevoix. I had to get up at 3:30 in the morning. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm seeing 2 of you already.
Excellent. Well, appreciate it.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yes.
First is the first reading of ordinance 21-463, which amends chapter 86, taxation, article 5, Bingham school tax exemption, section 86 through 95, and 86 through 99.
Council, in your packet is ordinance number 19-449, which was the original ordinance that had been passed by council back in 2019, which was labeled the Bingham School Apartment. So recently it was presented to council that folks that were trying to get this going had another plan, and they presented it, I think it was last meeting or 2 meetings ago. But I think it was last. In any event, there was also some information in the packet that came directly from them. I think council's aware of that. There was some numbers placed in there regarding 4%, 6%, 8%, things of that nature. But consistent with the last meeting, I prepared ordinance number 21-463. And so I'll read that and then ask for the comments of the members. So this would be chapter 86, taxation, article 5, Bingham school tax exemption. Section 86-95, establishment of any service charge, paragraph A1 shall be amended as follows. Effective upon the adoption of this article, subject to receipt by the city of the notification of exemption or other similar notification by the sponsor and or the authority, the annual service charge shall be equal to, and it's blanks because it wasn't sure what council was going to land on it. So shall be equal to blank % of actual annual shelter rents collected, less utilities paid by the sponsor. So that's the one proposed change. The previous ordinance passed in the year 2019 was a 10% pilot. Section 86-99, duration will be amended as follows. This article shall remain in effect, shall not terminate for so long as the mortgage loan remains outstanding and unpaid, or the authority has any interest in the property, provided that construction of the housing development commences no later than January 31st, 2023. The 2019 ordinance provided for a commencement date of no later than January 31st, 2021. And that was passed in September of 2019. So I have not had direct contact with folks that are planning the project, but I simply moved that date out consistent with the 2019. So in 2019, we gave them until January 31st of 2021 to get it commenced. So this will give them until January 31st of 2023 to get it commenced. The city council perfect. And then the provisions of this ordinance shall take effect 10 days after publication. So tonight is first reading. You just need any comments, suggestions, changes. Anything else?
The ordinance is much shorter than the 2019 one. It doesn't have all the preambles in terms of definitions and things like that. I just found it a lot shorter than the original one. Is that because nothing else has changed other than?
No, that the ordinance will still be, that chapter that establishes this is already there.
Okay.
It's just the two things that we would be changing from the prior establishment to the pilot rate and the date upon commencement of the project. So similar to the previous one, obviously the 4% and the 10% are the change, both change, and then the January 31st of 2021 versus 2023. All the rest of that ordinance should still be in effect.
Okay. I had a question I discussed briefly with Rachel this morning. As far as so everything seems fine if everything goes fine. What happens? Is this transferable if they're 10 years into a 25-year mortgage and they decide they're going to sell the whole batch, everything to somebody else? Is this transfer to the new owner, or does it How does that work?
Yeah, that was a issue that I discussed with Rachel, earlier today. And certainly council would have the authority, if we wanted to have some additional language for here about whether that could be transferred, whether it needed to be approved by the city for a transfer. So there's certain language that we could put in here that would not allow that to happen without council approval. And that's, obviously a concern. I don't know if the property owner or property folks could talk to that, if they have any intent of doing that, or if they have projects where they've done that in the past. But certainly that's a concern that should be addressed if the council feels it's necessary to do that.
Because it could, and thank you for coming. I forget your name.
Anthony Barker.
Anthony.
I go by Tony.
Tony?
Yes.
Because, and you could probably understand the question, and I don't know all the legalities of selling something like this or transferring it to somebody, but if they were to buy it and paid off the mortgage 10 years from now, then it would be paid off. So under the assumption of this amendment, then the pilot would be done for them.
Yeah, so affordable housing is a little bit different than just like an apartment building. So we're building this under the IRS code for tax credits. We were awarded tax credits in last year's round, which would have been like in April last year. The way they work is, the short answer they work is that when we build a building, it has to be affordable for 40 years. So whether I own it or anybody owns it, it has to maintain, it's got to be for the good of the community for 40 years. We're the developers. I'm with Hope Network. Hope Network is a faith-based nonprofit organization. We have approximately 10 different service lines to help folks who essentially have difficulties in life, whether it's elderly or it's folks with disabilities. And so we're in it for the long haul. We'll build this here and manage it for the 15 years of the tax credits or 25 years or whatever, and then we'll just rehab the building, put it back in service for another 15 or 20 years. We would come to you, see what we would need for if we needed additional break, or if we could raise it, that's when we would do it. The harder part about these jobs are they're not designed to make money. They're designed to service the community. And so there's not a lot of margin in the deals. And with this particular one, it's kind of a perfect storm that we encountered. Pandemic was one part of that perfect storm. The other part is that the actual rents are fairly low in this area. And so to make the deal work, we had to do a lot of different things. We had to borrow additional money, we had to find a lot of sources, we had to reduce things we wanted to put in the building. But the hardest part we had, the most difficult thing we had to do was find someone who was willing to finance the actual project. Typically, there's a regional bank that would do it because they have a vested interest in the community. But we couldn't find one. So we actually, at the 11th hour, were able to find a bank that was willing to come in. They're happy to be in this community. They just acquired a bunch of banks in northern Michigan, so they're planning on having a big footprint. And that was kind of the thing that made this deal work. The problem we had, though, is putting the deal together. They can't make the numbers work with the high level in place. And so part of our requirements was that we have to be able to show that we can get the 4%. And that's why we're here.
And is that in Impact Credit Partners?
Impact is kind of the let me say broker for lack of a better word. They're the ones that actually are helping us put the financial package together. Yeah, I think Horizon Bank is the actual investor.
So if I understand correctly, so the building right now is obviously a school.
That's correct.
So if approved at the way that this is read, and for argument's sake, let's just say it's at 4%.
Yeah.
So if this goes at 4% for the life of the mortgage, but it has has to, but it has to be affordable for 40 years. So if the mortgage is 25 years, let's say, then this will expire, but someone in your network will have to come back to us to
Yeah.
have something paid to keep it affordable for you to go for the next.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's reasonable too, because you've got to look at where you are in 25 years or whatever and see if it makes sense. And I think it might be able to be, quite honestly, raised 25 years from now, because we'll have it running. If we refinance it and put money back into it, it probably wouldn't, I mean, God help, we wouldn't have another pandemic or something. But the ideal is it will be a proven entity and it'll be running. And so it's not like a startup where you have no one living there. You've got the loss of lease when you start up and stuff like that. So it makes sense.
That makes a lot more sense.
What I like to say though is we're here for the long haul. Housing is not just kind of what we do, but we're a social determinants organization. So what we are worried about is the social determinants of health for our citizens. And so housing is one of those determinants. If you have a clean, safe, and affordable place to live, you're more likely to be able to do the other things that will keep you healthy. And that's kind of how we approach it. We also use it as an anchor, being in the community. We want folks to understand that we're here not just to service that building, but to help other folks who may not be able to live in that building also get other services. So, part of my operation is housing and community development. So we would partner with the community to find out things that we could do to help the overall senior population in Alpena and surrounding areas. At some point, we would hope to maybe put something in another city, maybe Rogers City or someplace else, so we can have some synergy in the area. So like I said, yeah, so this is a long-term project for us. We're not coming in as invaders, building something, taking the cash out. Everything we do will stay here in the community and will be coming up. We'll hire local.
And I don't know if this influences my decision, but I want to ask since you're right here. Does this facility expect to have an on-site person?
Yeah, we'll have
management.
Yeah, we'll have an on-site community manager.
So you would-
Yeah, I do. So the agreement has to be, the pilot has to be.
I think the pilot has to be for the life of the mortgage, not 40 years.
Okay, because what we currently have says 40 years. I would be more comfortable with.
No, the new amendment just has it, the new language is what Bill just read, so it is just for the
Okay.
language.
And
Am I right?
Yeah, for so long as the mortgage loan remains outstanding. It should probably say original mortgage, just so that if there was a refinancing 10 years from now, it doesn't automatically start it over. So the other thing though is that in some of the literature we got from you, Tony, it said it assumed a 25-year mortgage at a certain interest rate. So we weren't sure if you were committing to a 25-year mortgage or if you whether it's going to be a 35-year or 30-year.
Right now, it'd be a 25-year mortgage. Again, part of it is just getting the mortgage with like the night. So we were able to get a 25-year mortgage. Appreciate that. Again, at the end of the mortgage, all we're really going to do is turn around, syndicate it, put the money back into the building, and try to get the rent for another 25 years. So it will always be affordable from our perspective in this community.
so should we make an amendment on that?
I would suggest that so that it's clear that we're talking about the original 25-year mortgage that it's being.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, council at that.
Yeah.
Ability to reestablish something.
Yeah.
The
governance.
Yeah, it does. So the authority, it says the sponsor, which would be you.
Yeah.
And the authority is the state housing.
That's correct.
How long does the state housing commission have an interest on this, for the life of the mortgage or for the 40 years?
I'm going to say for the 40 years because it's a tax credit project. It's really well, rephrase that. The budget and limit. I think the authority has the same time to rent it, but the IRS has a, what we signed in order to do the project. It's committed to have been portable for 40 years.
Portable.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
Outside of the.
Yeah.
Outside of the mortgage.
Yeah, anything else, it's committed that that's going to be available for low-income folks.
And I have one other question. So, you pay all the taxes, whatever.
Sure.
we planned on. But it doesn't include the surcharge anywhere. It doesn't talk about the surcharge, which is separate from. So the pilot is paying the tax. So they're paying taxes, but the surcharge is above and beyond property taxes. It's not a tax, it's a surcharge. And every resident has to pay that, it's $20 a year. Who collects that? Is that in the pilot?
We collect that. We bill that.
To each individual?
No, it's to the owner of the property.
Paying every time taxes are due.
It's in the winter.
And you're aware of that?
Was not aware of that, but I think that's such a small number. I think we'll make
So if there's 35 units, which I think it was planned.
Yeah.
It'd be $700 a year.
we didn't figure it out.
And it's currently $20 could go to $20. Max.
We'll factor that into our performance, I think.
Should we mention that?
I think we should, so that there's no dispute that the city's passing this with the understanding that the units will still pay the surcharge regardless of the fine. So we could put an additional sentence in that.
What is the surcharge?
The surcharge covers recycling.
Oh, okay.
County percent.
So it's okay.
Is that how it works over at we only have one other pilot right now, that's up in the village.
Correct.
It works the same there.
Yes. When I say yes, I guess I leave it up.
Yeah, you're the,
Yeah. I think that's-
if you, I put you on the spot, but if you want to take.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Agree.
Okay. I have been about in fact, it's a position to have for housing for communities that we don't have enough of right now. And so the great use of the property, we'll see another school going.
Yes. Yeah, and that's a big piece of this, the big piece, obviously, everyone should be aware of the housing issue. Anywhere, so,
Yeah.
and this is part of the whole process of having a place for these individuals to stay that's affordable and bring perhaps some of their homes to younger people or people that are looking for houses. So it's all just kind of a
Circle of life.
circle. Thank you. So that's kind of where I'm coming at from it. Really, other than little changes I don't have an issue. I don't have an issue with it. It'd be nice to get something in, so otherwise it's sit there. And I'm prepared to go with 4%. Because it's either that or we deny it.
Yeah.
I broke my call, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Bill, so this is, so we don't, there's no vote next first reading.
I will, let me recap this. So we're going to say for so long as section 8699, for so long as the original 25-year mortgage loan is outstanding. So that's one change. Second change is we'll add a sentence that the $20 recycling surcharge shall apply to all units and be in addition to the pilot noted above. The pilot noted above will be equal to 4%. And then we'll add one more sentence that there will be no transfer. Well, the pilot's not transferable to another legal entity without approval of the city. I know you guys don't intend to transfer it.
Yeah.
If something happened 10 years from now, we want to transfer it, we certainly want some control over whether we're going to
Yeah.
approve it.
And I'll say this, it will transfer, but it'll transfer from the current entity into another one of our entities. It runs its tax credits, so we can then put it back into tax credits. So, but it'll all be within our family.
But that'll be when you come back and
When we
ask for
come
the
back,
extension.
exactly. Just so you know.
And this was just, I think, one of the questions that was posed was, well, what happens if you guys sold this next year and got out of it?
Yeah.
Would the city be stuck with whoever bought it? I think that was a concern. I didn't want to be stuck with, having some say over that.
Yeah.
Transfers, but they don't intend to do
No,
that.
they're not going anywhere.
Tony, are you certain that it's a 25-year mortgage? Because you're gonna put original, or you're gonna put 25-year? You're gonna tie it to a number?
Original 25-year mortgage, because I thought that was the plan.
Okay, Dave, you on the spot? Anytime business director?
We can follow up to Ron on that to verify that wording should work.
Yeah.
Then this would, and then with that language would come up at the second reading
On the 18th, and then
October 18th.
Okay.
And so, and even then, if there's, that would be the vote, so if there would be something minor.
Sure. Correct. Yeah. We appreciate that. Our goal is to get under construction in December.
That's the expectation?
Yeah. We are, we're under a tight, hard deadline to get it.
Excellent. So you won't even be waiting until the 2023?
No, we will be open at the end of 2022.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. All right, thank you, Tony.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Now is the first reading of ordinance 21464, which amends chapter 62, Personnel Act, Article 3, Retirement System, Division 1, generally section 62 through 74, termination of membership, reinstatement.
This came about due to an employee who was no longer with the city. And the question that arose is, does that person automatically forfeit their interest in the pension? Because section 62-74 said that except, for any reason except their retirement or their death, they're no longer a member of the accredited services shall be forfeited. So it was not the intent for that to happen if the person was otherwise vested. So what happened is the retirement board addressed the issue several months back, and this language was drafted over the retirement board. The retirement board voted to approve this, but this still has to be approved by council. There were also some minor changes in gender here. As council knows, a lot of our documents all say he or councilman. So we changed these to be, to get into the 20th century at least. So there are a lot of his or her changes in here as well. But the substantive change is as follows. This will now read, except as otherwise provided in this article, should any member no longer be employed by the city for any reason except their retirement or their death, they shall thereupon cease to be a member, and their accredited service at that time shall be forfeited by him or her unless they meet other requirements under this chapter to vesting in. And so that would be changed. And this is the first reading, so if council's okay with this, this will come back for formal reading, second reading, excuse me, and passage at the October 8th. And the provisions of this ordinance shall take effect 10 days after.
So this is the first time that this was encountered in all of, since it originated?
Yes, as far as we know. Yeah.
I think there might have been one other case, but it didn't get updated that time.
Anybody have any questions? We're all set. Secretary. All right, next up is communications and petitions. Downtown street parking and Albert Hess is here, business owner and traveling ladders to address us.
I'm going to read the letter that actually I think all the council have in their packets this evening. For the audience that don't know what it's about. My name is Albert Hess. I have a business at 109 North 2nd, Traveling Ladders. My wife Rita and I have been at this location since 1986 in the downtown. What I'd like to bring before the city council is a long-time problem with repeat offenders in parking laws in the downtown business area, which is a 2-hour parking from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. except Sundays and holidays. This is a little history on parking. A common rule of thumb for value of a prime on-street parking space is approximately $150 to $300 in retail sales per day. Based on this calculation, the cost per year in the downtown retailers is a loss of $45,000 to $90,000 yearly when business owners, employees, and apartment renters in the downtown area park in the prime time areas. The information is according to Hyatt and Palma Incorporated of Alexandria, Virginia. Now, these figures will vary from city to city, of course, but bottom line is retailers in the downtown Alpena are losing sales. When customers can't find parking, they go to more convenient locations to shop. The current DDA policing of parking is not working. The person giving out parking tickets has no real power to stop repeat offenders, other than a $10 fine, which is the price of doing business for some or just the cost of a parking spot. I feel her start time should be at 10 a.m. weekdays and parking needs to be covered on Saturdays, which is a busy day for retailers and restaurants in the downtown. It is not the tourists of Alpena on most occasions that are violating the parking laws. It is the business owners, employees, and apartment renters. Ask the city police department who they are trying to reach when special events are being held in the downtown area on weekends. Their vehicles are in parking spots. I saw this happen this past weekend at the Beer Fest. This is not in the letter. They were trying to find a business owner. That person setting up was running to the doors and they finally got moved. What is needed is an escalating fine structure. For first offense, say $10, second 20, third offense is $50, and the fourth $100. This has been done in other cities that have the same problem with repeat offenders. They find new places to park as it becomes too costly to them when their fines are higher. In conclusion, I would like to ask the city council to look into this problem as I have gained no satisfactory answers from others. It seems a very low priority for them. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions at this time, I'd be glad to answer what I can answer on the situation.
Albert, thank you for your time.
Okay.
Spent time to write this, to gather this information, and then come in here this evening. I certainly appreciate it. I can't really argue any of the points that you've made. We discussed it on committee levels ad nauseam at times about parking. Obviously, it's nothing new to the community. So I'll let the council kind of speak to it if they like. I will. I don't want to give you the impression for a minute that I'm just going to pass the buck and this will disappear again. I'm going to talk to Ann as recently as today to take this back to the DDA and bring us the DDA's recommendation. Because in my mind, to make anything work any better than it is right now, it would probably either be your recommendation on the scale fine, which I find that that's probably may or may not be very difficult, at least a little bit difficult, because I'm aware, and Joel's not in the room, that's fine, but even the police department doesn't necessarily run plates when they get parking tickets. So there's a parked vehicle, they write out the windshield and then off. So that would, to end up with the scale and be targeting, but keeping some kind of log as to who had it, parking ticket for however many times. Anyhow, that might become difficult. But they can look into that. I think Ann's team is probably the best to do that at this point. And the other alternative would be paid parking, which we talked about on my entire terms. And so I'd like to send it back to them. Ann's in the room. She's aware that that's what I would like to do. Send it to the DDA. They have a meeting tomorrow. They can establish the committee wants to take care of that, bounce that back in a time period of perhaps our second November meeting, come back with some kind of recommendation as far as what they would like.
I'd like to make it clear that the problem that I'm speaking about is not directed at the residents of Alpena or our tourists coming to and from in and out of town or our shoppers, because they're not the issue. On a daily basis, you can walk in my one short block and there's at least 5 places, sometimes 6, that are taken up daily by people that are parking them. That amounts to be a lot of business for a lot of businesses. And it's not just my street. I've contacted over a dozen different businesses walking the streets. They all have this letter. You may or may not have heard some of them through emails. I don't know. Some of them said they contacted you via email or whatever. But some said there are a few of them here tonight, matter of fact, that I have spoken to. And I know some of them feel very strongly about the same thing and the same issue. This is not a new issue. It's been beat around, goes around the circle, comes back.
I understand.
Other cities, what they do is they make a publication in the newspaper, they put it on the air. If you get caught violating the second time, the fee goes to this. If it happens the third time, I've got examples that I talked to the city manager. She has those. She's aware of some of those. You may have seen those packets. Just a few places I looked up. You can go on the internet and find numerous cities that have the same issue and what they're doing for it and not having paid for parking. Because you're just, when you have paid for parking, you're penalizing customers, especially a lot of the downtown residents in Alpena are not going to want to come downtown. They're going to have to pay. So I'm not out for that. I'm not for paid parking.
I understand. I just threw it out there.
I know. Well, I know. And then, years ago, it's been talked about doing meters and then all this new type of thing that you go to Ann Arbor, Grand Rapids, you do. You walk up with your app or your credit card, and that's expensive for the city. They just need to come up with a system that's going to work. And when winter coming, I've been told by a lot of businesses, because we have the demographics in the area are more elderly than young. That means a lot to them if they can get close to a business to come in and out of it. So those spots are filled up daily by the same people. Those people aren't going to come shopping downtown. As simple as that.
I appreciate it.
Any questions? Anybody else?
I just have one quick question, Mr. Hess. Have you looked at whether some of those other cities have a time limit on when the second or third or fourth ticket?
They do. If you go in and look, actually I probably over there, one of the cities, what they did, they give a publication. There's a certain period of time that if you get a ticket within so many days, it becomes your second violation. It's not hard to tell which ones are violating it because they're there every day. I mean, if somebody to go by the next day, they're there. Right at the present time, you get a $10 fine, and that's it. If you got it in the morning, why would you move your vehicle? I mean, realistically. I mean, if you're a business person or a professional, that's the cheapest parking spot if you live in Ann Arbor or Chicago or any place else for the day. But in the meantime, small businesses downtown and large ones for that matter are losing money.
Thanks.
And I'm just going to put in my 2 cents. Lived through so far 3 DDA directors. And this is not an issue in the very first one. We implemented 2-hour parking, thinking that would eliminate people would have to move their car. It didn't. And we did, the fines, thinking that would be a deterrent. It wasn't. And it's not that the DDA over my tenure with the DDA for the last 20+ years hasn't tried to solve this problem, because we have. In the beginning, we thought we could do it, try to do it diplomatically and set up letters to the business issue for the city most many years ago. asking for people to please be considerate of those parking spots, because if you don't want to walk, it really just your customer. To please park in the lots outside. So, whoever is tasked with this, it's not going to be easy.
I know it's not easy, but I've heard the stories, it's not feasible to this, there's not software for this. This day and age, if there's not something on a tablet or a phone that they can't walk around and tell me, and if you get a ticket in the morning, if you're still there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you've kind of been, your ticket was at, let's say 10:30 or 11 or whatever happened the time you got the ticket. Like I said, on Saturday, there's no policing whatsoever. There's been cases where apartment dwellers have left their vehicles there for the entire weekend. They went out of town. I know on one occasion, police had to come down there when they block off the streets when they run into the issue, and I saw it happen at the wine fest. It happened again at the beer fest last weekend. It's not like it's new, so. I think escalating fines would be a way to deter it, without punishing people that come down there and do their shopping or stop into the store and they're out of there in an hour's time.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you again. Like I said, and here we've already discussed it. We'll see what happens in the next one.
Your turn.